Well, we're back for another episode of the Usher Group Podcast, and I couldn't be more delighted today than to have Sam Reece on, Director of AAA, Australian Apartment Advocacy.
That's us.
We've just come off the back of one of your amazing awards nights, the Queensland Apartment Awards, so welcome to the podcast, Sam.
I really appreciate this, Michael. Thank you.
You're welcome. Sam, I've gotten to know you very well over the last 6 to 12 months in our partnership, but I really would love to sort of introduce you to the listeners that's going to jump on the podcast today. So firstly, who's Sam, and then lead us into Australian Apartment Advocacy and how you sort of got here today.
Sure. So I'm a mum of 2 teenagers. I do dye my hair, and based in Perth, Western Australia, but obviously started the Australian Apartment Advocacy in 2016. So we're celebrating 10 years this year, which is a bit of a milestone. And, you know, Queensland was actually the first East Coast state that I actually transitioned into back in 2022. And we loved Queenslanders and your approach to development. And now we've gone into, obviously, New South Wales and Victoria. And now we're actually launching this year into South Australia and ACT.
Wow.
So world domination.
World domination, yeah. And it seems like you're really creating a movement out there. And I mean, obviously, you talk about advocating. So what is it? There's the stats at the moment is about 2.5 million apartment residents. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. And very soon it will be 4 million. So, and of course, most of the targets being set in each of the states is that, you know, for example, Victoria, they want to do 80,000 new properties or houses a year. 70% of that will actually be apartments. So we actually have really been fighting for a long time now to make sure that apartments are seen as a preferred housing choice, not a lesser choice, and at the same time beefing up those consumer protection rights that we want so that people, when they move into a home, really love it and endorse it, and, you know, it becomes this trend of apartment living is the best thing ever.
Wow. And I really feel like it is, particularly we're seeing it from a construction point of view. That's where so much of the focus is going. It's all going to high rise, high density, but it's just changing lifestyle, right? But with that, I guess there comes some risks and perceptions around whether the quality is there or the right lifestyle is there. So talk to me about AAA. Like, what is it that you guys do and what is it that you stand for? Because I know that you're someone who's very passionate and you're out there for fighting for, you know, being an advocate for the owners, but what is AAA?
So we actually say that we represent the whole apartment sector. So developers, builders, strata managers, architects, suppliers to the industry, but everything we do benefits the owner. So we're very pleased. In Victoria last year, they introduced the Bioprotection Bill, which is the first time in 26 years they've actually done any kind of legislation to protect with the build quality. Now they've passed decennial liability insurance, which means that over 4 stories will get home warranty insurance, because now if you buy into an apartment and it's 3 stories, which does also include the basement, so if it's a basement and 2 stories, you're covered. Anything over that and your builder goes bust, the owners face the defect bill. And as we know, that can sometimes be 2 million, 9 million, right?
Yes,
so we don't want people to move into an apartment and then get stung with an $80,000 kind of levy. That's just not fair.
No.
So we're very pleased. And the decennial liability insurance is definitely also in the New South Wales government. And I hear from my connections that it's getting supported. And of course in Sydney, or New South Wales, they're also doing mandated committee training, which is really great.
Right.
Insurance commissions is a big topic at the moment. So New South Wales obviously is reviewing that. Victoria's actually got the OC Act review, and so has the ACT. So Queensland's on my sights next.
Wow.
So we're very pleased, because if I didn't see some shifts and changes occurring, I probably would have packed up my lunchbox and gone home. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But we really want to see that robustness, and it means that we weed out those developers that are actually giving the apartment sector a bad name, and we really need to actually, which is why we have the awards, promote those companies that are doing a great job.
No, that's fantastic to hear. So you're really out there trying to change the outcome for the owners. That's the whole drive behind it. And I'm assuming that's where AAA was birthed from. So what were you doing prior to that? What's the sort of background for you?
So I am a marketing and PR girl with a long history, lobbying and events management and so forth.
There you go.
And but I have run my own company pretty much since 2000.
Wow.
So I ran a marketing and PR company until 2013 and sold that, and then had a year off and I wrote a book.
Wow.
Because I then started doing motivational speaking for AMP and Vicinity and Westfield and those kinds of companies.
I was not aware of that, but
Yeah,
it completely
there you
makes
go.
sense. I can see that. I'll have to track down this book of yours, yeah.
I'll send you a copy. It's not for sale. It's
Okay.
just I thought, who's going to hire me if they've got a choice between Ida Buttrose and me besides the $50,000 difference in price point? I thought, why would they hire me? And I thought, well, I'll write a book. And so I did about marketing and business planning. And that was
brilliant.
great because that was just like a business card. You know, if you sent that into a prospective client, they were, impressed. And it's always nice, in terms of actually saying that you're an author.
Yes,
And then I started, obviously, the Australian Apartment Advocacy in 2016. And that was a part-time kind of gig. And then by the time we got to 2019 and the Mascot Towers and Opal Towers, it really became a full-time kind of occupation. And I'm very lucky. I've now got Helen and also Marge working with me, and Beth does our research. So it's a great little team, and we're really hitting some great runs. And you have to do that, right, when you're running a business. You have to see it evolve and grow, and actually, I wish I had $1 million to spend on mass advertising, but, I think we're still making some headway and we're still known in the right circles. Yeah.
And what is it that you're so passionate about? Like, how did this company be birthed? Like, was there a problem you were solving or challenges that you saw or things people were facing?
NIMBYs. So they're not in my backyard. That's why I started the Australian Apartment Advocacy, because I saw a suburb in Perth, South Perth, which had got planning approval and a town planning scheme, and then the 300 people who didn't want the apartments got vocal, and they handed back $70 million worth of contracts. The developers had to send it, and I was like, no, the squeaky wheel can't have that much influence. And so I went to the Raw Show and stood there for 7 days and got my first database of 700 people. We now have 30,000 on our database.
30,000.
And
impressive.
we did our first set of research. So we do research every 2 years. And so that kind of then led to me going to councils and saying, listen, housing choice is important. I've got this survey here with 1,100 people. COVID, it was 3,500 people who responded. They're saying they want this housing choice. It's your job to provide it. And so we've been very proactive in actually spruiking the apartment lifestyle and the benefits it provides. We call it the easy breezy lifestyle. And the research shows us that 60% of people who move into an apartment do so from a house.
Yes.
So apartment living is very new. They don't understand AGMs or financials or bylaws or, levies. And so it's a big, wide, new world. And especially if you're a baby boomer moving in your 60s, it can sometimes be a bit of a shock.
Yes, yeah. And there's some horror stories of people getting caught out. And I'm sure in your years, and you've talked about certain ones from, was it Opal Towers and a few other challenging
Opal
ones?
So Opal Towers won the Champion Award this year for us in New South Wales.
Yeah, well.
And 8 years on, they're defect-free. But I've got to tell you, Shady, who's the chairperson, and I'll give a plug because we've actually got How to Learn from award-winning OCs on the 2nd of September, and Shady is going to be one of our panel members there. Like, that was just, Christmas Eve, midnight, you hear this almighty whack. They evacuate out of the building, right, 300 to 400 people. He said he stood on an ice cream crate, and said, "Don't worry, we'll be back in tomorrow." Famous last words.
Yep.
He managed to get everybody accommodated in a local hotel. The next day they had government, the builder, the engineer in a meeting room, and for every day for about 6 weeks they met. And he was like, keep the lawyers out. just keep the lawyers out. And he successfully actually negotiated to actually then have people who were landlords compensated by Icon, the builder. If people didn't want to stay in the hotel, they wanted to move into an apartment, he was able to do that as well. He had people going in and getting the Christmas presents because you weren't really meant to be in that building. And he had a business with 200 staff, which was specialising in pharmaceutical and medical. He stepped back from that, and for 18 months he fought for those people in that building, really. It makes me quite emotional because really no one should have to go through that, but what a champion.
Yeah, what a
Hence
champion.
the champion award, right?
Absolutely.
And they won a $50 million court case.
Really?
Could you imagine lying awake at night wondering if you're going to win that court case? Like the pressure.
The stress, yeah. For
Right.
young families and all any scenario, like you just,
Yeah, so kudos to Shady and the committee from Opal Towers and Premium Strata who actually entered them. They're coming to the National Awards on the 21st of August. And, I really, those kinds of stories are the reason why I do what I do, right?
Absolutely.
Because and I wasn't involved in actually helping them, but it's really nice now to acknowledge them and to give them some kudos because one of the categories in our awards is the People's Choice, and so the Greens at Strathfield won that this year. But when the judges were talking about what do we give Opal Towers, it definitely that was the first time we've ever given a champion award out. So
wow,
yeah,
that's pretty special. Hey?
Yeah.
So talk us through these awards. I know you said that the reason behind it is to try and promote more of this, strong apartment development, doing it the right way, giving a right product to the the apartment owners that are out there. But so you've got a number of different categories, and what's the real purpose behind the awards?
So we have 16 categories because we're seeing in other award programs that you've got a mid-rise and a high-rise. What does that tell you? So we have innovation and technology, precinct rejuvenation, ageing in place, boutique, luxury. We also have affordability, so the whole pioneering. We have the apartment sector leading light, which is actually a judge's discretion. So we gave that to local residential's 2 CEOs this year. So Dan McLennan and Matt Berg, because they actually are building build to rent, which is affordable, which is a rarity. Yes. But also they have been allocating 10% of their housing stock to affordable and people with fleeing domestic violence, people with disability, key workers. But their latest project actually has allocated 33%.
Wow.
So when you see that kind of leadership, a lot of developers will say it's not stacking up. They're saying it's too hard. And then you've got others who are going, well, let us show you how it's done.
Yes, yep.
And creating fantastic apartments, great amenities, And it's one of the greatest joys in my job is to actually go out with the judges in each of the states and just see the entries because, we have a town planning, a sustainability, a construction, a strata, and architect judge. And a lot of other entries, they just get them come in on the piece of paper and they just judge it that way. But you've got to get out there and have a look.
Absolutely.
And,
if I can say too, because I was fortunate enough to go with the judges to a few projects that we entered for Queensland, and I've got to say their attention to detail, and like you said, they just didn't just stand back and have a look at the building. They inspected every part of it down through into the basements, every level. They were looking in behind cupboards and doors. Like they wanted to make sure that the product that they were judging was
robust.
Exactly, robust, and that the quality was there through and through, because sometimes things look good on the surface, as I'm sure you know, but behind the scenes there's cracks and there's issues and all sorts of things. So it was really, really good to see that they cared enough about what they were judging to make sure that it was very thorough what they were looking at. So I was really impressed.
Well, we have a number of values. Best practice is one of them. We're tenacious, we're passionate, we're about empowerment, we're trailblazers, we have transparency. So we can't have, an award-winning project on the front page of the paper with people being evacuated at midnight, right? That's our brand.
No.
And we did have a situation, probably our first New South Wales Awards, where we went to a beautiful-looking building, gorgeous, in Newcastle. But as soon as we went into the basement, we went to the upper basement, we could smell the mold and the moisture, and then we walked down the next level and there was just water gushing in. Now we all understand a wet basement. This was clearly a failed wet basement.
Yes,
and we had to tell the architect, and they were like, had no idea this was happening. And I'm like, well, when you're novated, which in New South Wales you are, this is your job. Now I'm pleased to say that that architect firm has stayed loyal to us, and they're actually moving into the national awards this year.
Brilliant.
So, at the end of the day, we can sometimes be a bit tough, in terms of expressing our disappointment in the build quality or, and I have to have some difficult conversations with developers, which is why we don't take sponsorship from developers.
Yes, yeah.
But, at the end of the day, those that actually are good, sometimes don't have oversight over their subcontractors.
Yes, yeah.
And they're the ones that if I ring them up and say, I need this to be done, go, not a problem, Sam. And, it's done.
Yeah. You're just trying to raise the standard.
I sometimes have to put them into the media.
I've heard this. You're the Erin Brockovich, I heard, of Strata. I've heard this,
I called myself an apartment ombudsman for a while. That made a few government people unhappy. But you can actually be a self-appointed ombudsman when there's not enough representation for a group, and there wasn't.
Wow.
But now there is. We're evolving, and
like you said, being a trailblazer, and
Yeah.
You see the owners need it. So especially now that there is such a major shift that's moving that way. You know, we are running out of available land space for just general housing, and then the affordability and, you know, especially I know in Queensland now between here and the Olympics, like the amount of influx that we're having and people moving from other states and internationally, and what we need to be able to do to service the work that's in front of us. Like the only real way to provide enough housing for that is through apartments. Like it's just, there's no other way around it.
Yeah.
And whether that's affordable and, you know, or even these luxury high-end ones, like there's just, every which type of it, but it needs to be done properly.
It does.
And that's the real scare and the real risk. And even from our point of view, you know, we're very selective and cautious in who we partner and work with. And it is concerning to see how quickly the market is accelerating. It's exciting times, but it's also, you think, at some points there's going to be sacrificing the right quality in tradesmen, you know, doing things in a compliant manner. And it's, for us, we're trying to make sure we align ourselves with the right people that we can stand by a product that we're proud of as well. But it's you know, it's a scary thing, and who is actually holding these people to accountable and, you know, making sure things are done properly. So really take my hat off to you and the AAA team to being, you know, such a strong voice for that, and to not be afraid to say something, because I think that's half the issue, isn't it?
Oh, you've got to. You know, the elephant in the room, and that's what actually happened when we first did our research in 2019 after the Mascot Towers and Opal Towers. You know, the data came back and it showed us that 60% of apartments had critical defects. So I'm not interested if you've got paint spots, right, on your wall, or if your garden's, you know, not growing, you know, and that kind of thing. I do the red, orange and green. So the red for us is structural cracking, waterproofing, water penetration from outside. That's through doors and windows as well as the roof, and then also, you know, like the issue with fire. So and when you're kind of like dealing with those situations, like I took one of my owners that I'm representing into see Paul Ebrook, the Minister for Consumer Affairs in Victoria, and Ashini's 63 and she's lovely and she's meek and mild, but she knows the Strata Act back to front. And she said to the Minister, I'm 63 and the building that I've invested in, I've been told by Building and Plumbing Commission it's unlikely it will be standing in another 10 years' time. And she said, Minister, I'm going to be homeless in 10 years' time.
Isn't that like it?
And that is not a legacy you want to leave.
Not at all. No,
right?
No.
And, you know, I always find it very hard when I see politicians being very flippant about people facing defects, because at the end of the day, your home is a safe place. You know, at Maslow's hierarchy says you've got to be safe, and the one place that you should feel safe is your home.
Absolutely.
And
you look at the sacrifice it takes to get into a home now. Like it's not a small investment for people.
No.
They put everything they have into it, and they should feel safe and secure, whether you're owning or renting. Like it's just, you know, it's a scary thought that may not be the case for people.
Correct, and I think we've got to change our mindset. We invest in property because we're expecting to make money off it. It's become an asset class. Really, it's actually a safe place to be, a home, right? Where you can go and have tranquility and feel at peace and have your family and, be happy. And so, I think that we're seeing a lot of change and evolution around that with the apartment sector. So the build to rent has certainly come to the fore. There's some great companies doing amazing things. Lend-Lease, Grey Star, they entered our Victorian Awards. Home Apartments had their first New South Wales project. So, they're all like, Lend-Lease has got a bowling alley, right? And they have a work, rest and play. They have 3 different levels. And
Incredible.
And, so owning a home, I don't think that's actually, we talk about the Great Australian Dream. Maybe the Great Australian Dream is not about owning a home. It's about actually being somewhere where you love to live. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's going to, and especially my children, they're 18 and 20, and my son's girlfriend, her parents have a very large block, and they're thinking about putting 2 granny flats out the back for, Emily and Shelby. And so Emily's saying to me the other day, Max is going to move in with me. And I said to him, that's good news. He goes, I don't know, Mum. He says, I don't have to pay board here yet. Yeah. And when I move in with Emily, I'm going to have to pay $250 a week, plus I'm going to have to buy my food. And I said, and your power, son, and your phone. He's like, I might just stay here.
There you go.
So I think this, and I know there's a lot of people out there who love having their kids around, and they actually are fine with them not leaving home. I'm not sure. I might leave before my children. But I think at the end of the day, we're seeing a lot of intergenerational now coming to the fore. That's the first thing that we've seen this year with our research.
Yes, yeah.
So, I think in the next 20 years, you're going to see the apartment space change again, and modular is definitely part of that equation too.
Yes, there's a lot of this exciting space happening with modulars, isn't it? What they can achieve and do, and increasing time frames, but also having everything prefabricated, ready to go, so that there is a lot of these less issues in construction and
correct.
Eliminating some of the risk.
Yeah. So when we were in Adelaide just the other day, and there's an architect firm there, Fieldwork, and Vlad went and actually inspected 460 bathrooms, as they were being created on the manufacturing plant.
Yeah.
And I think, there's some hesitancy from developers to take that leap of faith, but like with local residential, you always have the leaders in the pack, and Home Apartments did BTR before anyone thought it was cool.
Yes.
And now everybody's in the pack, right? Yep. So you always have those trailblazers who will say, well, I'm prepared to actually take the risk of that, and they have the first mover advantage. But, especially in South Australia, all the concrete's being used for massive tunnels and bridges. There's not a lot around for construction. So,
you're right.
That's why we're going to be doing our think tank there this year, because you have to think right outside the box. We want to provide this housing, but what does that look like between now and the 5 years time frame?
Absolutely. And how do you compete with all this major infrastructure, particularly in Queensland, where we've got the 2032 Olympic Games? There's going to be all this major infrastructure happening, and how does the residential market compete with that?
Well, our think tank for Queensland was that we wanted to see an innovation hub and funding for MMC, modern methods of construction. They've now announced that in Sydney or New South Wales. Wow. And certainly also decentralisation of Sydney was another one of our think tank kind of like focuses. And then they're now fast-tracking the train, right, the fast train.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's great to be, we're only a small organisation. And when I started, I was a lone-man band. And I think it just goes to show that, if you actually have the guts and the determination and the foresight, you can be a power of change for a positive.
Absolutely.
So don't ever think to yourself, I'm just one person, because one person can make a big difference. So if you've got a great idea, just get out there. And we're very lucky because we have sponsors like Usher who say, you know what, we really like what you're doing and we're going to support you. And that's what funds us. I wish it was government.
Yes.
It's not.
It's not.
It's a private enterprise.
Maybe
one day. Well, I think what I'm just doing is bullying them into actually creating the infrastructure and systems that they need to actually protect those owners. If one person can do it, why can't a government, right? So, Yeah, I think that's exactly what we want to start to see, is that real focus, because apartments are going to be a focus, and unfortunately the government has actually neglected the apartment sector for about 20 years, but that's going to change now.
No, absolutely. There's a question, Sam, I've been wanting to ask you as well, but if you being sort of the lady that you are that's across everything and seeing it all, if you were to give the apartment industry a report card right now, what would that report card look like?
So for innovation, an A. For build quality, probably a B. Maybe a B plus. In terms of then strata management sector, it would have to be maybe a C. So, we're seeing a lot of strata managers aligning with developers, and they're meant to take direction from the lot owners, right? And I actually was part of an AGM the other day where there were 7 positions on the committee, and so 4 owners put up their hands and the developer put up their hand to take 2 positions, but they didn't like the idea that there'd be 4 against 2 because they've been dominating the committee and making decisions about defects.
Yes, yeah.
And so they said, we have to vote. I'm like, no, you don't have to vote. There's 7 positions, there's 6 people.
Yeah.
And they said to the strata manager, we have to vote. And so the strata manager actually then voted, and then 3 developer positions were on and 1 owner.
So then
Well,
where's the best interest aligned?
I took it to the Herald Sun, right?
There you go.
So, and we had again on the Melbourne Age, we had a situation where a strata manager from Ace Body Corporate was actually asking one of our sponsors for a $20,000 kickback. And I'm like, well, does that come out of your profit or does it come out of the owner's pockets? So we really want to see that strata sector really mopped up, because these strata companies are actually earning, $30,000, $70,000 from these owners, and yet they seem to have missed the point that they're actually of service to the owners and they need to know the Act. The Real Estate Institute of New South Wales, I judge the strata entries, which is great, and we have a great relationship with them. And they're talking about the fact, we've done the education with the changes to the legislation. Well, that's a given, right? If you're having to change the legislation, you shouldn't be bragging about the fact you've gone and done the education. That's a given.
How can you do your job without knowing that?
It's like a CPD, right?
Yes, yeah.
So we need to see licensing of strata managers, especially here in Queensland. And I think the building, like the strata commissioner here, also needs to have more powers, on par with the strata commissioner in New South Wales.
Yes, yeah.
And ACT and Victoria are currently considering that role. And they say to me, Sam, how many resources do you think we need? And I said, well, I'm doing national at the moment. So I say to them, get someone who's really good with an EA. You only need to allocate like a $250,000 kind of budget.
Yep.
Track it for the first year and see how you're going. And then if you need to increase the resources, you can demonstrate, and we charge owners to come to us and actually, pay us $150 to become a member. They get a free hour with that time. And 99.9% of the time, we resolve the issue within the first hour.
Wow. Just based on the experience and education knowledge of actually what you're dealing with.
Well, I'm a bit ballsy too, Michael. I had...
I wouldn't have picked that.
I had one the other day and he told my client that the faulty or non-compliant fire door was not for the benefit of the rest of the owners, so they weren't going to replace it. Well, hold on, it's a fire door, right? So stop smoke and fire from leaving the apartment. So it's clearly of benefit.
Yeah.
And so I researched and found the CEO's name, and I then found her email address. And so I sent that email to her and I said, not only are you now liable, there's a fire and there's someone who dies, your strata manager has just made you liable. Do you want to comment on that? And it got fixed.
Resolved.
Right?
But, imagine if you weren't there to intervene. What happens?
Well, that's right. And that's why we need a strata commissioner in each state, right? Because, and not someone who's going to make you wait, 6 months for an answer. Because, I did have someone the other day and she rang me and she said, I'm going to take my neighbours to VCAT. Only 5 in her apartment complex. And I said, why is that? And she goes, the cat from next door neighbour is coming into my yard. I was like, you need to get a grip. Right?
It's one extreme to the other, isn't it? Yeah,
you're going to wait 52 weeks to go to VCAT. I can tell you now, my darling, if you put that up there, the presiding member is going to say, please exit the room,
Yes,
So, but being an apartment owner, not everybody is suited to it, right?
Yes.
So we've done some research and we found that, if you're a minimalist, you're outgoing, you're sociable, so not home a lot. If you're kind and considerate, generous, and you actually are a good sharer, great. You are an apartment owner, right?
Yes,
But if you are someone who is easily irritated, can't handle footfall, above you, or distract yourself with some music, you're not suited to apartment living. So I always say to people, try before you buy.
Yes,
Move in, give it a go. And then if you like that, then go and purchase. Because, I have had owners move in and then they've lost their cool with their neighbour and then they've had to sell and move out. Because I tell you what, you don't want to be getting in that lift with that person that you're annoyed with because it makes it very difficult.
You can't escape it, can't you? It has to be a very cooperative environment. So that's an important fact. And I think, like you said, you see some people have the mentality that everything around them should change to suit them. But the reality is that's never going to happen. So you've got to be willing to meet your environment and, obviously within reason. If things that are completely out of order, that's one thing. But generally speaking, you've got to, you're either suited to it or you're not.
Yeah, and you've got to be flexible. So, at the end of the day, I always say to owners, you never know when you're going to need someone's help in a building, right? Because if you want to do some changes to your apartment and it involves common property, which means the ceiling and the floor and the walls, you have to have everybody in the building say yes or not dissent. So I always say, always treat people, what the old saying, you attract more bees with honey than vinegar, right? So if you think you're going to say something that's not going to be right, hold off.
Very
go
sound
to the gym.
Take a breath and go for a walk.
Or put some music on. I've got a friend of mine and she has a dog in her neighbourhood that at 8 o'clock when the owners obviously leave to go to work, whines from 8 to 9. And she's done a mail drop and she's tried to find out who it is. And I said to her, you go to the gym every day, darling. Just go at 8.
Yes, change the schedule. Make it work. It's little adjustments, hey?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
But you have to, so if you're, because when you move into an apartment and you want to actually, if you're getting water penetration through your window, a window is common property, you then have to rely on the committee. And if the committee's taking their time, you can't then lose your rag or become a squeaky wheel because then you become known as a troublemaker. And then no matter what you ask for, it's a no because it can get very personal. Right? So
absolutely.
We need to keep that interaction in apartments very civil and mindful.
Important point. So education obviously is a big part of what you do and trying to educate all parties, the owners, the strata, everyone involved.
Yeah. And even strata managers, we've done some sessions with strata managers about how they can actually engage differently with the owners, right? Because if you're ignoring an owner, that's like a red rag to a bull, right? And they just up the ante, up the ante, up the ante.
Yes,
and I always say to a strata manager, if someone comes in and they've got a lever arch file with colour-coded tabs, be afraid because they have done their homework, right?
Ready to go,
And they're gunning for you.
Yes.
So, 9 times out of 10, you can change the whole dialogue, but you have to be the leader to do that.
Absolutely. And if you zoom out away from apartment owners and things, because I know that you follow from development through construction to handover, apartment owners go in, but what about the other piece of it, maintenance, the ongoing aspect of looking after a building and the impact that can have on owners and their assets as well?
Yeah.
Have you had much engagement, involvement there? Like what part? Yeah? Yep.
Yeah. Well, because, it's like everything in life, darling. Prices go up, levies go up, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
so if you have a group of people who are on a fixed income and they don't want to necessarily put up the levies, that's just going to actually erode your asset.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So I say to people, I own a $70 million asset. I'm highly unlikely to own a $70 million asset again in my life. So when I sit at the committee table, I put my business hat on.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm like, what's the best for this building? What's the best for this community? And provide choice and options. So if we have to raise money to, my balcony failed, it's a $30,000 repair bill, right? Everybody in the owners corporation or body corporate are paying for that.
Yes. Yep.
So how do we actually then do it that the impact is not going to be onerous? Do we do a strata loan? Do we take a long-term view? We just basically start putting money into the maintenance fund with the idea that down the track we're going to be replacing 2 or 3 balconies a year.
Yes. Yep.
And so it's very hard when you're a person on the committee. It's a thankless task. You're actually volunteering your time. I would love to see people on committees being paid.
Well, it's not an easy job, is it?
No.
There's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. And certainly, we see that, if you've got people who are corporate people, so people who are used to sitting on boards or making executive decisions, they treat that whole committee situation perfectly well.
Yes. Yep.
But if you have people who are not used to making those kinds of decisions on there, they get pretty scared.
Yes.
And they're worried about the impact. They're worried about not being liked, being rejected, called out, and so everybody has to remember that if you're not happy with what's happening at your committee level, then you've got to get on the committee.
You need to get involved, yeah.
Right? There's no use pointing the finger.
Yep.
At the end of the day, they may just be doing the best they can.
Yes, yep.
So, if you don't like it, be part of the change.
Yes.
Don't be the critic.
No. Great advice. Yeah, we find it hard sometimes from our position too, because we have a big aspect of Usher's business is repaint and remedial, fixing things that are already there. But we're trying to get into that space of prior education as well and trying to follow that process from a job that's handed over, new construction development, to actually trying to maintain that asset proactively, preventative maintenance, as opposed to waiting 10 years down the track till there is concrete cancer and there's water ingress and things like that. So, and I think that's where I think there is a bit of a gap there. And I feel like it's definitely improving, but quite often when we get asked to go in and look at a place, the cost to repair and to get it back to where it needs to be, whether that's structural and things, it really should never have got to that point.
Correct.
And that puts so much extra stress back on the owners. And not only that, not just the cost to fix it, but to the interruption to living. It's horrible for us sometimes. We'll be on a project and you might end up having to spend 6 to 12 months there and you're invading owners' privacy. Basically, you're on their balconies, you're trying to fix things, and there's no other way around it. Scaffolding it. It's it takes someone's comfortable, safe living environment. Not that it's unsafe at that point, but you obviously know you're impacting their lifestyle, but it has to be done.
Yeah, it has to be done.
And I guess for us, we would love to just see more of that preventative, proactive maintenance where you're actually looking after, washing down the building, getting rid of all the,
residue, especially on the coast, which you have a lot of here in Queensland.
Yep.
So I always say, if you don't repair it this year, next year it's going to be 10% more.
Yep.
That's
right? A great, simple calculation, and it's so true.
Prevention better than cure.
Yes. Yep.
So I have a mate, and he says to me, it's been 6 years and we still haven't fixed our defects. And I'm like, Chucky, that is not something to brag about.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So, but that's where the strata manager really should be playing a much more proactive role. But they're so often so scared to actually kind of challenge because they want their contract renewed.
Yes. Yep.
So they, as a consequence, we often will then mediate. We'll come in and we'll basically say, I went to an AGM the other day with a proxy, and the owners are saying, let's get some new fobs, for the lift and everything else. I'm like, you've got water ingress through your fire board, right? Which is then setting off the alarm and the fire brigade's coming out.
Yes, yep.
And so in order to not actually cop the cost of the fire brigade coming out, you've actually disconnected your fire board. Wow. And you're talking about new fobs, hello,
yeah,
right?
wow.
And so strata managers often actually engage us to come in And because they're taking direction, but then I can come in, sharp shoot,
Yes, yep.
and then exit, and they can like that bitch.
Yeah.
But at the end of the
Yeah.
day, sometimes that short, sharp, kick up the pants is what those committees need, and those owners need to go. Okay, well, we really shouldn't be delaying this any further.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yeah, powerful.
Because at the end of the day, if your building is looking shabby and your corridor's shabby,
Yes, yep.
you aren't going to sell that apartment. So you've got to look after it collectively.
Yes,
You've
yep.
got to look after it. And you hear people say, oh, but we've got investors in the building who don't want to, spend money. And then you have investors saying we've got owner occupiers who don't want to spend money.
Yes,
But
yep.
you've got to have a common cause, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so what we like to do is actually work with apartment developers and actually set values for those people moving into the community. You set values as a business,
Yes,
right?
yep.
It's important that you actually, one of the first sessions that you're doing with your owners is like, what are the values? Are we tolerant? Are we generous?
Yes,
are we
yep.
kind? Are we transparent? Are we proactive? You
Yes,
know,
yep.
those are values, because then when they're sitting at a committee level and they're going to make a decision, you can say, does that align with our values?
Yes,
And
yep.
if it doesn't, then we shouldn't be making that decision.
Yep.
So there's no litmus at the moment for those owners to actually understand, okay, what is guiding us besides we're just a bunch of people trying to do the best we can, but it's a big asset
Yep.
to make a mistake with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, those are powerful tools to use for yourself personally, businesses.
Yeah.
So why not transfer that into
Yeah.
apartments? And
Yeah.
I actually hadn't thought about it from that perspective. But it's, again, if you can really get yourself aligned with what your values are that's there, it helps make decisions that pull out some of those emotions and the fear of making the right call.
correct.
Because it's like, well, hang on, bring it back to those values, then that's driving the decision, and it doesn't matter who it might upset in doing that. It's being true to what it needs, the situation, I guess. So,
Correct.
Yeah.
And, what you don't want to do is see a huge churn with the committee. You want to have stability with the committee, no vested interests. I had a chairperson on my committee who acted like he was the sheriff. We had a visitor car park where there was someone parking in it, and they took it upon themselves to actually move the car out of the car park, and I'm saying you're breaking the law. And I was saying to the strata manager, is that compliant with the Act? And she's going, no. And so they moved it out.
Yep.
And then the apartment owner came back and he's like, where's my car?
Wow.
And I was like, blame the chair. So, you just got to remember, don't let the power go to your head. You're there. It's a democracy. You've got to vote for things, and you've got to actually, represent everybody's values and beliefs and needs, not just your own.
Really, really powerful. And so what do you feel then are the biggest gaps that this apartment or the sector needs to close in the apartment industry?
I think it is closing. I think it is actually beginning to now shape up, in terms of then the right protection measures, the right accountability. I take my hat off to New South Wales, Minister Chantavong, James Sherrard, Natasha Mann, Angus Aberdeen, because, they're working really hard behind the scenes to make sure that, You've had 20 years of neglect. It's going to take a lot longer than 3 or 4 years to change that paradigm, right?
Yes, yep.
But you've got to start.
Yes.
You've got to make the start. And, it's like all change management processes. There's pain and then there's gain,
Yes,
right?
yep.
And you've got to stick to it, and you've got to see it through to the long term, and you can't get weak-kneed, and you can't be lobbied by certain interest groups who are kind of like resisting change.
Yes, yeah.
It used to be that, the developer was like, I'm king, I'll dictate the price to the builder, I'll build whatever I build and the buyers will buy it. That's gone.
Yes, yeah.
So if you can't get a builder and you then also can't get the buyers, the developer is nowhere.
Yes.
They can't get their project off the ground. So often when I hear them saying it won't stack up, what it means is that I don't have anyone buying my properties, right?
Or the right relationships to make it happen.
Correct.
Yep.
So what I love about Hutchies is they talk about the fact that it used to be the architect would be on the billboard, and now it's the builder on the billboard.
Yep.
And they drive past billboards and they're like, that guy's got our logo on there and we haven't signed that contract, right? So I always say to my buyers, don't worry about the developer, don't worry about the architect, check out the builder. Because that's going to tell you whether or not that project is going to stack up. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people don't do a due diligence, right? But if you're going to buy an apartment, you have to get your building inspector to not only look at your apartment but the whole building. Because if they start seeing stalactites out of the car park or trays catching, the drips, then that's a big sign to say, don't invest, don't buy.
Yeah, wow. And I love how you keep yourself so well across some of the changes and legislation, things like that. Like, are you spending a lot of your time studying, saying, like, how do you stay up to date with all these changes and updates and on the front foot?
I'm very lucky. I have a very good group of people around me who I rely on. So lawyers, Bronwyn Weir. If I don't have the time, I'll ring one of them up and go, tell me the shortcut of what's going on.
Brilliant.
Right? And I do a lot of podcasts like this with strata managers and lawyers, and then by talking through what's going on, that's how I also glean that information, right?
Brilliant. Yeah.
But we are included in all of the government conversations, all of the workshops, and so, we're often the only voice representing the owner in those sessions, And we had an interesting dialogue the other day. We were in a government conversation in Victoria. 3 ASX-listed companies were in the room. And they're like, hold on, why are we paying for the decennial liability insurance? It's the builder's responsibility. We had nothing to do with it. And I was like, you have a certifier.
Yeah.
You have a certifier, and they are to tell you whether it's being built to Australian standards or not. And I said, quite frankly, I'm shocked because if it got out in the public domain that this is what you're saying and you are one of the largest groups of apartment builders in the country, how would that affect your brand? And they were like, don't you dare drag our name through the mud. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm just observing what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily like
being called out. Interesting.
But someone's got to do it.
Someone's got to do it, yeah. No, it's incredible.
And we find that government calls us after those meetings and say, thank you, we didn't understand that.
Yes, yep.
You asked the questions that we weren't aware to ask. You kind of like pull that apart for us, and so we can see it in more detail.
Yes, yep.
And that's a privilege for us, and I'm really glad, I'm going to look back on this chapter in my life and I'm going to say, you know what, Sam, you made a positive change. And I'm getting emotional now, but good on you, girl.
Well done. That's beautiful, eh? And you can see that there is so much pride and passion that's there, and it's something you care deeply about, which I think is, the sign of any true beautiful cause for someone to be able to pursue. Yeah. And you can see you got that fire in your belly. And do you feel like as you get more outcomes and that you can see the positive change you're having, do you get more traction? Like, is there a fire in your belly to, what's the future for AAA? Where do you see this going?
Well, I said to the minister the other day in Victoria, please make me redundant.
Yeah, well, that would be the ideal thing. Yeah,
if there was no problems out there, I wouldn't have to do what I'm doing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
So really I would like to be made redundant.
Yes. You want to have such a positive impact that you can step away.
Yeah. I might run for politics sometime soon.
Wow.
Let's see. Hey?
Jeez, let's watch that space.
Maybe I won't. I'd be a teal. I certainly wouldn't be aligned to any party. Because I think to myself, well, look how much change you've made as one individual person.
Yes.
Can you imagine if you were in the machination, what you could do? And that's why you have to be independent. Yep. So watch this space.
Absolutely. Well, Sam, honestly, we feel so grateful with Usher to be associated with you. You've got such an incredible network. We've had so much value in just being associated with your organisation and the people that you're partnered with. And we can just see that, Australia-wide, you've got such a strong, solid backing from industry professionals and very well respected. So, yeah, really want to say thank you and really excited to see your journey ahead and where it goes. And hopefully you can make yourself redundant and pursue some of your interests. But we look forward to following you down to the National Awards. I think we're going to come and celebrate.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we've got Picos Group with Sky, who's a finalist from Queensland, Brunswick and Co., which is Cox Architecture and Fraser's,
Yes.
and then Odyssey Chevron Island,
Yes, yep.
which one of your nominations. So
Absolutely.
Good job.
Yeah,
because,
well, we're involved in Brunswick and Co. as well. I didn't know if we knew that, so we were on
there
that
you
job
go.
at Hutchins too.
Oh,
so,
okay,
yeah,
fantastic.
Yep. You can celebrate it all together.
Yeah, the judges were really impressed. And so if you're coming to the National Awards, you're going to come home with something, some kind of trophy, because we don't like to waste anyone's time. So we're very excited. We're at the Crown Towers, 29th floor on the 21st of August, and we're going to have a wow time.
Oh, you make it a lot of fun, a massive night, so it's going to be great.
There's no girl in a balloon, though.
Not this time. I can't wait to see what you do have. Yeah. No, it's brilliant. Well,
right.
thank you, Sam. Really
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
And we really appreciate Usher's support. We're very grateful, so
No,
thank you.
You're welcome. Many more. Let's go.
Yay.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks.